Every empire believes its money is sacred. Every ruler swears the system will never fail. Yet history has proven again and again that every promise written on paper eventually burns. From ancient Rome to modern nations, people have woken up one morning to find their savings worthless, their salaries meaningless, and their trust betrayed by the very systems they depended on. Collapse isn't the exception, it's the cycle of civilization itself. The real question isn't if money fails, but what survives when it does. We grow up thinking that currency is something solid, a foundation of our lives. We check our bank balances, hold coins and bills, and believe they represent security. But money is not a rock beneath our feet. It is a shadow built on confidence, and confidence can disappear in a single night. That's why history matters. Each collapse leaves behind a pattern, a warning, and a quiet map for those willing to read it. And if you study those patterns, you lines find that the survivors of every financial disaster share one trait. They question what everyone else blindly trusted. The Byzantine Empire is a perfect example. After the fall of Rome, Byzantium inherited not only its territory, but also its obsession with gold. Their coin, the solidus, became legendary, a piece of gold so pure and so consistent that merchants across continents treated it as the world's first global reserve currency. For centuries, it held the empire together. Trade thrived, armies were paid, and confidence soared. But over time, the same temptation that destroyed Rome crept back in. The emperors began to shave purity, mix in cheaper metals, stretch each coin a little thinner. At first, no one noticed. But trust is a fragile thing. As purity declined, so did faith. The solidus, once the symbol of stability, became another instrument of deception. The empire's economy cracked under the weight of its own manipulation. Those who had quietly stored real gold or invested in land outside imperial reach watched their wealth endure while the empire's paper promises turned to dust. That was the first lesson. Every generation forgets governments can't resist debasing their own money. And when they do, real value always runs for cover. Not all collapses are created by greedy rulers. Some are born from chaos no one could control. In the 14th century, Europe faced its darkest test, the Black Death. It erased half the population between 1347 and 1351. Entire cities emptied overnight. Fields went untended. Trade routes vanished. But beneath the tragedy was a strange economic shift. When half the workforce dies, labor becomes priceless. Survivors suddenly had bargaining power. Wages rose. Land, once hoarded by the rich, became cheap and abundant. Those who could work or trade goods found themselves in a position of strength they never imagined. In short, the plague redistributed wealth not evenly, but dramatically. The poor who survived often climbed higher, while nobles who depended on endless labor saw their fortunes crumble. It's a pattern that didn't die with the Middle Ages. When COVID struck in the 2020s, history repeated itself in digital form. Supply chains fractured. Governments flooded markets with printed money, and those who already held assets, real estate, stocks, gold, grew richer. Meanwhile, those who lived paycheck to paycheck sank deeper. Once again, liquidity became power. Those who could hold on through the panic came out stronger. Pandemics don't just kill people, they expose inequality, accelerate it, and reward those prepared for scarcity. The lesson echoes through time. Crisis doesn't create new winners. It reveals who was ready all along. Centuries after the plague, Florence rose as the financial capital of Europe. Its bankers financed kings, built cathedrals, and controlled trade from London to Constantinople. Names like Bardi and Peruzzi were spoken with reverence. They seemed untouchable, too big to fail. But then came Edward III of England. Desperate to fund his wars with France, he borrowed colossal sums from the Florentine houses and never paid them back. When England defaulted, the banks imploded. Ordinary Florentines lost everything. Businesses folded. The city fell into riots, and those who had trusted the unbreakable banking elite discovered that their wealth had been built on promises as fragile as glass. It was the 14th century version of a financial crash. The pattern returned centuries later in 2008, when Wall Street banks collapsed under their own illusions of power, dragging millions of ordinary savers down with them. Florence and Lehman Brothers shared the same curse, believing that reputation could outlast reality. The truth, then and now, is that institutions exist to protect themselves, not you. When the walls fall, they will always seal the exits first. The smart ones in every era are those who understand that safety built on reputation is no safety at all. By the 19th century, humanity had found new ways to repeat old mistakes. During the American Civil War, both sides fought not just on the battlefield, but in the treasury. To pay for the conflict, the Union printed greenbacks paper money backed not by gold, but by the promise of victory. The Confederacy printed even more. By the war's end, Southern currency was worthless, and families who had once been rich held bags of paper that couldn't buy bread. A century earlier, revolutionary France had done the same. The government seized church lands, promised they would back a new currency, the assignat, and then printed it into oblivion. Within a few years, bread riots returned, and people demanded gold, food, and anything tangible instead of paper. Each time, the pattern was the same. Once trust is broken, no amount of ink can bring it back. Those who survived didn't hold patriotism in their hands. They held something real: food, land, gold. The lesson echoed through every revolution since. When ideals meet hunger, hunger always wins. In the late 20th century, new players made the same old mistakes. In 1997, the Asian financial crisis began with a single spark, a speculative attack on Thailand's baht. Within months, currencies across Southeast Asia collapsed. Millions lost jobs, savings, and homes. The people who survived best were those with assets in stronger currencies or outside their borders entirely. Then, in Lebanon from 2019 to 2021, banks locked their doors. Savings were frozen. The currency lost over 90% of its value. Doctors, engineers, and retirees stood in line for hours only to be told their life savings were gone. It wasn't robbery in the night, it was robbery in daylight, legalized by crisis. Those who had assets abroad, real property or gold endured. Everyone else was trapped in an illusion that had dissolved. The pattern had come full circle. Byzantium's gold, Florence's banks, the Confederacy's paper, France's assignats, Asia's debt, Lebanon's frozen accounts all told the same truth. Trust is not a system. It is a story we agree to believe until it breaks. The people who endure collapse are not the ones who trust most, but those who question first. And here lies the paradox. Collapse is both punishment and opportunity. When illusions crumble, value doesn't vanish, it transfers. From those who waited to those who prepared. From passive savers to active builders. From believers to skeptics. Real wealth isn't what you hold in your hand. It is what holds value when everything else burns. So when the next crisis comes, and it always does, the only real question will be this: will you be holding paper, or will you be holding something real?